Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 333, featuring Ross Denner, head of 3D, creative director, and VFX supervisor over at Artjail. What did you think of this podcast, Kristen?
Well, this was a great one. One, he was not a fan of computers. Never thought he would be in this life. So he kind of fell into it and then started off doing furniture design and then moved on to working at the Mill, which is a great story. I like that one. And now he is in New York working, helped start up a boutique studio, Artjail. And he also talks a lot about the advantages of V-Ray for Houdini and how they love it at Artjail. And he prefers to keep a one render engine. He really doesn't like to change. So that was interesting to hear because you hear all these other places use a lot of different ones, but yeah, he sticks with one.
It's very interesting. Yeah. So to be clear, he actually didn't start up the Artjail, but he helped start up the 3D department there because they were much more of a sort of a clone 2D or sort of a boutique 2D place. And so he started doing a lot of 3D stuff, and the pipeline that he's doing there is pretty interesting. And it's really interesting, actually, like you said, a small boutique place that's actually doing, that starts using Houdini as their main pipeline. That's not what we would have thought would have happened 10 years ago, but that's what's happening right now. And it's very, very cool. In fact, I actually met Ross, I think the first time I met him was when he was working at MPC in Santa Monica, which is pretty cool. And we know several people in common. And it was just really great talking to him. Lots of weird conversations that we had. We ended up going on a detour about dyslexia for a few minutes as well. And that was kind of fun. Ross is a really great guy, and I'm really glad that we finally were able to talk about that. And he's actually one of the first guys to really sort of put the pedal to the metal on some of our V-Ray to Houdini features. So it was great to have him on finally to talk about all those cool things. Speaking of which, Kristen, what kind of product announcements do we have?
All right, so V-Ray 5 for Cinema 4D Update 1 is now available. And we talked about in the past V-Ray 5 for Maya and Houdini Update 1. And then we also have Vantage Update 1.3.
Perfect. Exactly. So lots of cool things are happening in Cinema 4D. You guys should check it out. We've done, as you guys, a big overhaul, as you remember, when we first put out V-Ray 5 for C4D, and this is the first major update since then. So lots of things to look forward there. V-Ray 5 for Maya and Houdini Update 1 are also available. Lots of great new things there. The big thing is especially our USD implementation, as well as our implementation inside of Solaris in Houdini, and also how we integrated USD inside of Maya. So that's a big deal that's happening there. In fact, I think we're writing a blog post that should be out fairly soon about that. And then for Vantage, lots of great new features have been added as well. So if you guys are following Vantage, definitely check out the new update 1.3, which is still available for free for now. Okay. If people want to find out more about the podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you want to watch us on YouTube, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you guys have any questions or comments or ideas for podcasts, we always love to hear them. labs@chaosgroup.com is our email. We would love to find out your thoughts. All right. That being said, please enjoy this awesome podcast with our good friend Ross Denner at Artjail.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
All right, Ross. So, I know you said you were a little bit nervous about doing this, which is perfectly fine. But one of the hardest things I'm going to ask you to do is tell me a little bit about your past. So let's dive into some of this stuff. What got you into CG and got you involved in the sort of the creative process of what you do? Like, what education did you stumble on, or what happened there?
Well, to be honest, I've never been a fan of computers, and I kind of just fell into this. So
Really?
yeah, 100%. I mean, without realizing it, I guess I was a fan of this kind of industry, like Ray Harryhausen and all that kind of stuff as a kid, because I'd be stealing my parents' camcorder and making Lego movies and all that kind of stuff, and using like all my other toys when I was really young, and just making all these kind of stop frame motion, kind of little animations. But realistically, never thought I'd ever use a computer. I went to education wise, like I didn't really fit with like high school kind of stuff, and I had to find my way around that. But I eventually ended up going to art college to study furniture design. So I was doing furniture design. I was also have like kind of my dad is a carpenter, so that's his trade. So I kind of learned a lot of skills from him on that. I went and did furniture design, and then realized that I couldn't afford to make half my furniture because I was a student. So I kind of like stumbled across 3D Studio Max and started using that. And then it was like, there's endless possibilities in CG. And that's how I went. And then from there, I went back, had the harsh reality of finishing university, and the university bubble burst. And you kind of like had to figure out what you're going to do for a career. I went back to crash at my parents for a couple of years and studied like this on the computer side, the 3D side of computer stuff. And just basically stumbled into like, I obviously did all right. And stumbled into getting a job. That's basically where it started from.
Where was your first job?
First job was I got like a bit of a kind of work experience at a company called Bermuda Shorts in London. And they were predominantly like a 2D house. And I think one of the directors directed the Take On Me music video with a pencil drawn stuff. So it was really? Yeah, it was super cool. So like just being there and being around those people was like super, super amazing. And then I started helping out a guy on a pitch, and we were kind of combining like cell drawn stuff in a kind of cartoon vibe, and then I was doing like toon shaded CG cars and all that kind of stuff. And we pitched and we won this job. And yeah, I think the Mill were bidding on it, MPC were bidding on it, Warner Brothers, all those kind of people were in it, and eventually we won it, but we weren't allowed to have the job or something. There was some kind of political reason. I'm not sure exactly what was going on there. And I walked over to the Mill and just basically asked for a job. Really, I mean, there was some more kind of like bits and pieces in that, but like the guy I was working with, for example, was friends of Angus Neal. So So he set up the New York Mill, basically, and I got to meet him, and I think he might have thrown Stephen Venning a bone and just said, give him a chance. I'm not sure, really. Either way, I ended up like walking into the Mill, and they gave me like a week to learn. This
was in the UK, right?
Yeah, this is London.
Yeah, so this was all in the Soho field area, and just literally walking across the street is like what it is, right?
Yeah, I was in like North Soho, I guess, for Bermuda Shorts, and yeah, it was all so nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking as well. Like the big shops were always there, and you're kind of like, oh, am I going to be good enough for this kind of thing? But yeah, they gave me a chance. Like I said, Stephen Benning gave me like a week to learn Maya, basically. And he stuck me with a couple of really nice people to learn underneath. Super cool guys, super talented and kind of good laugh. And I worked there for about a year.
When was this? About what year was this?
This would have been like 2005, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would have been like 2005. Did a year there, worked like non-stop every day. Like I would go to work, find out what I was meant to be doing the next day, and preempt it a little bit, but then start like downloading videos and tutorials and all that kind of stuff. And this is before like you kind of look on YouTube and all of a sudden you got the answer. It's just like, I've got to find a way of getting this information. But I'd be really nervous and I'd be like panicking and all that kind of stuff. But I'd be like preempting what I had to do, and I'd like learn every night, stay up stupidly late, learn, then I'd go in the next day and do my job. Yeah, I worked there for like a year. Worked really hard. I ended up having a break over Christmas. Came back and they were like, oh yeah, we forgot you were working with us and we haven't got any more work for you after a year solid. So, and I was freelancing obviously, so it didn't matter. I just had like this permalance position there, which was really nice. So then I basically got my resume together, CV even, got my show reel up to date, and I walked over to MPC and I basically just like called out whoever the person who was looking after the CG department at that point, and I was like, yeah, I've got an interview with him. And he came down. He was like, "We don't have an interview," and I was like, "I know, but I need a job," kind of thing. And it seemed to
Check
work.
your books. I'm sure you do have an interview.
Yeah, it did seem to work.
That's pretty ballsy. That's cool.
It was pretty ballsy. I had to like man up a little bit and do it. I mean, obviously, I knew the guy roughly from like working with him some at the mill, but he left the mill and went off to MPC. And then MPC basically became my home. And I was permalance there for like a couple of years. It was a great experience. Met some really, really talented people, which are in those big houses. And then like they started opening up the LA office. And I think maybe 6 months to a year into that, I turned around and I was like, I want to leave London. I want to get out of here. What are the chances of, going to the US? And prior to like getting into any of this, I used to play basketball a lot in Europe to a reasonably good standard. So I used to come out to the US a couple of times to basketball camps. So I've always kind of like been interested in the US and what it's about for a lot of sports and all that kind of stuff. And they gave me the opportunity. They needed some help out in the LA office, so they sent me out. And that was the rest is history. Really, it was like MPC for like 6 years out in LA, working and grinding it. Then I went to where did I go to? I went to Mecca.
But this is
for a couple of years.
MPC was in the US. That was not. You were doing mostly. There was mostly commercial work being done there, right?
It was all commercial work. Yeah.
It was all. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It was mainly all commercial work, but every so often I got sent up. I was fortunate. I got sent up to like Vancouver a couple of times to kind of play with the feature stuff. Because at that point, MPC was very heavily developing all their stuff for features. So they had all their own little crowd systems. They had their own first systems and all that kind of stuff. And it got to a point where I think the feature department was struggling to support all the commercial artists because the commercial artists were like, they run like 900 miles an hour and features traditionally always have like a longer time. So getting people up to speed and supporting them was easier on a feature because you have your whole team. You have your TDs, but on a commercial, it's like, all right, we've got like, 2 weeks to knock this out and somehow we need to make a furry creature and we've got to use all our proprietary software. So someone has to go and learn it. So I had that joy.
What was your role at MPC at that point?
At the start, I was just like a kind of CG artist, and then I very quickly get into CG lead and CG supervising, and then eventually got into like VFX supervising. And then it also kind of like fluctuated as well. Like there was moments where certain jobs you would end up being like the creative director on a job. So I took that on. The last job I did at MPC LA was this job with Robert Strongberg. It was like Intel, What Lives Inside. I think it was like a 40-minute, 10-part TV show. It might still be on Hulu, I'm not sure. But it was but it was 40 minutes, and it was basically 40 minutes of pure CG with some talent in there as well. And that that ended up using MPC India, which was Bangalore or Bangalore now, I guess. Used London, it used New York, and it used LA. And that was like a 24-hour kind of like system, just process, just trying to get that through. I think my day started at like maybe 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning because I had to deal with London, and then I think I finished around 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes as well. And that was kind of like a standard. And it was just it was exhausting, but it was well worth it. The experience was insane. And I also like some of the guys who are in the MPC LA office now, they worked on it. And they're now head of departments and stuff. And without those guys, the job would never have got done. It was a really, really steep learning curve, but it was a really, it was just fun. It was fun. Like as exhausted as I was, like the work with someone like Robert Strongberg was amazing. And to be given the opportunity to be like the creative on it as well was amazing as well. So you just kind of like, as he kept saying to me, just embrace the crazy, just embrace the crazy. That's what he kept saying to me. And that was great. That was a good experience. But predominantly,
I think I think that's where I met you. Right? Was that in the MPC LA office when you were in Santa Monica? I believe, right?
Yeah, because like basically Andy Boyd joined.
That's right.
Method. He became the head of 3D. He's a great chap as well. He introduced me to you guys and you and V-Ray and all that kind of stuff, which was amazing because at the time we were running with Mental Ray, I'd assumed, and RenderMan we would have used for anything else for all the feature stuff. Andy turned up, Houdini turned in, and he was like, yeah, Mantra, V-Ray, they work really well together, check it out. Oh, and Scott Metzger was involved as well a little bit.
Oh, Scott Metzger, that's right.
Yeah. He turned up a few times as well to help us out. But yeah, that was probably where we met, I think. And I think Vlado turned up to the office a couple of times, right? I believe. I believe he came and saw us
Yeah.
a couple of times.
I remember it was me and Lon, and we went there a few times, and you guys had some big jobs going on, and so you'd always like, okay, we'll bring Vlado over because he's in town or something like that. So I remember, and then Scott did some big project with you guys. Was it a Samsung job or something like that?
Sony, and he was like obsessed with showing us how many polygons V-Ray could render and how all the glossy reflections and all that kind of stuff. I remember it all. I mean, the guy's fantastic. But it's just the willing to show me all that kind of stuff was hilarious. It was like, I remember you're talking to someone as well. Like I said, like I never thought I'd ever get into computers, and I try to treat like computers as if it's a medium. So I'm not the technical side of things. I'm not techie at all, but I just kind of like make things work somehow. I'm sure it kind of frustrates people, but then you've got someone who's like super techie, talented,
really into the computers,
and like obsessing about this, and I'm like, this is great, but it's kind of like okay, kind of thing, which was fun. But yeah, I mean, and I think Lon helped us with getting V-Ray and Massive working as well.
Yes, because we had to make sure that there's some development that had to happen on both sides of the software to make that work. And Vlado was trying to communicate what exactly was. Yeah, I do remember that project as well.
Yeah, because that was super handy. We needed that. That was amazing. That was like that was just like, how the hell are we going to get this done? I don't even know what to do. There was a gentleman, Rick, who kind of Amric, who flew out from New York to help us. He was like a massive boffin. And between him and Lon and a lot of coding, and I guess you guys as well, it somehow the magic happened, and it was like, this is amazing. Like it was one of those moments where like it just felt so liberating. It was like, this is brilliant. We can do this. It's like I now don't have to panic. I've got like super talented people who are helping us, and just the fact that people with different offices were like willing to help as well, it was mind blowing. As a community, it was amazing.
Yeah, it's that those are great things. I mean, those are the kind of projects that I really get excited about, where it's like, okay, we've got this person, he has this very specific problem that needs to be solved that could benefit other people as well. But like, in order for this to happen, I got to get party A and B and C and D all talking to each other, and just like, what do you have to happen? Oh, I mean, to me, that's kind of, and then when it happens, like you said, it's like, wow, it's happening. It's working. Yeah.
It's so nice. It's so nice, and it's so fun as well, because that was the thing I really enjoy about this industry, is the fact that if you get it right, you end up having a bunch of like super cool people on different levels from different backgrounds, and you just kind of come together and you just make it work, and you figure out everybody's strengths, you figure out people's weaknesses, you figure out how to motivate people. Deal with the usual kind of client stuff, but then you just bring it together somehow, and you just get something done, and it's kind of like very rewarding on that level, for sure.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So when I remember Andy, obviously Andy when he was at Method, because Andy and I were at Method around the same time, and he obviously as well known, he's a big Houdini guy, loves Houdini, big SideFX guy. I think that's kind of a common trait. I've noticed a trend in South African guys being big Houdini guys.
That's hilarious.
I know several South Africans that were at DD, etc., and they're all Houdinis. Like they're all like hardcore Houdini people, which is kind of funny. Was that sort of one of your first big introductions to Houdini in certain ways, or?
Yeah, but I mean, Houdini, I never really got on the train early enough in my mind. Like I should have jumped on that really early. And Andy was trying to promote it, but he had like his team who managed to bring with him to who were just like amazing at it. But yeah, I mean, I put so much effort and time into Maya. I just knew how to do things in Maya just as quickly, if that makes sense. Right. I just didn't. For me, at that point in my career, it wasn't like I didn't see the benefit, if that makes sense. I was going to have to go backwards for a long time before I could go forwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Houdini, most people in Houdini were only basically just using it to do effects, right? They weren't, because Andy was the first person that I knew was like, no, we can do more than just effects on this. We can make it like the primary DCC. And I was like, how? Okay. Because I didn't really know that. Everyone is like, no, everyone just uses Maya. We'll just use Houdini to do all the crazy breakup stuff, explosions and things. So it was kind of new to me to like think about it as beyond that. Is that sort of one of the things you got introduced to from Andy, or was it
with Andy? Andy was very funny. Andy was we had like a couple of fur jobs going on. I think he had like one of his Kia hamster things going on, and I think and we were doing like we were sharing it. We were doing like maybe a baby hamster or something. What were they? I think they were little hamsters, and they turned into the big hamsters. And we're doing little hamsters in like the RenderMan film setup with MPC, and he was doing it all in Houdini. And it took us twice as long, basically, in the MPC feature setup, because one, we're just like struggling through it and trying to make it work, but also it was like it didn't have that ability, like, you know, I hate to say it, but that proceduralism which Houdini brings, you know. So it was kind of eye-opening on that level, just like, now I understand a little bit of the power of this. It's like I can just make a tweak here and it affects everything that's done, you know, whereas in Maya it traditionally doesn't do that. You always have to, at some point you have to like stop it. But it was definitely Andy who introduced me to Houdini for sure. And even when I was like floating around after my MPC and method days, I would go around to his new company, and like he'd show me a few things. He'd get super excited like he does. He's like a big kid sometimes, you know.
Yes.
Just so infectious as well. And he'd show me a few things, and it's like, oh yeah, I really want to do this, really want to do this. And then from then on, like, I've just been chipping away at it as well. And then I've met some people, because we moved to New York, so I've met some people who I've re-caught up with, people who I used to work with, and they're boffins at it. So they kind of just help me out and show me stuff. But I'm never going to be an effects master, put it that way. I just use it for like, I'm really enjoying like the rendering setup and all that kind of stuff, and a quick way of like passing through attributes and getting them straight into rendering and all that jazz. That's why I've netted out.
Well,
like,
we'll get into that in a second, because I obviously want to talk to you about, you know, what you guys have been doing in Houdini more recently. But so when you were still, you know, at MPC, and then where did you go after MPC?
MPC, I went to Method for a couple of years.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm laughing about that, but I went there for a couple of years, and that was interesting again. That was more like strictly supervising, which is like one of the things I've kind of struggled with a little bit with myself in this industry. Very much coming from a creative background of like going to art school and, you know, all the furniture design, all that kind of stuff. It's like, at what point do you pull away from being on the box as much now? And a Method, it was very much like, you're off the box, you're a VFX supervisor kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, it's cool, but I can also do this. Do you know what I mean? So I was trying to figure out, you know, I had to learn all these kind of like different skill sets and trades, if you want, within the industry, and like going on set, collecting, you know, first of all going on set, collecting data, but going on set, but talking creative with DPs and ADs and directors, and dealing with all that, and all the agency side of things as well. You just learn that really quickly. But then also when you come back into the studio, I'm kind of like, I still want to like produce a little bit of an image here. And sometimes you hear of like, especially with commercial directors, they're asking me, and I'm sure they ask of other artists, you know, are you going to be working on this or not? And I feel like they actually like it. They like the idea that you're following through from the start to the end on some of these jobs, because a lot of the time you end up having, well, bigger shops anyway, you pass the job stock to the left. But
it's hard. It's hard to trading in your tablet, you know, to do emails, which is
basically it's justifying doing something. And honestly, like I'm dyslexic as well, so like the written side of things just crushes me. It crushes me. So like I
am dyslexic as well, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
There we go. That's cool then. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this is why podcasting is much easier than I used to have to write blog posts, and that was the worst experience.
Oh man, I couldn't do that. I've literally just started Instagram.
I was good at writing the posts. It was just pain, like the pain of the coming out of my fingers, typing in words and trying to get them to,
That's hilarious, man. I had no idea. That's really funny. Just everything about the dyslexic thing doesn't make me want to do emails, doesn't want to make me do blogs. It doesn't want to make me write. Like I will get on a phone with an artist, especially in like today's like situation. I will get on a phone straight away and call someone. Or if I'm in the office, I will go and speak to someone. But other people are just like, it doesn't matter what level, you know, the size of the job or what have you, I will go and speak to them individually, because I would rather do that than write up like a million emails. Like I was saying, I've just literally started. I've recently started like Instagram for the first time, because I was so paranoid that I'm going to spell something wrong, you know, and stick it out there because I'm dyslexic. And it's like, I'd rather not bother doing it. I'm just going to set myself up, you know.
But at Instagram, you just post a picture and then you don't.
I know.
have
Well,
to
that's
say
why I've
anything.
started it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the first one. I'm easing into social media.
Yeah. It's interesting. You say that. Yeah, it depends. I've actually had to overcome it quite a bit, and I think it's interesting that that was a thing that you had, because it is interesting. You're such a good creative person. And it's really sometimes when you just can't type and you can't write, it feels like you're not necessarily like, am I overqualified for this? I have my own little things that are problems like that. Like my good friend, Eric Sheely, is clearly very dyslexic. His emails are like 2-3 words, just enough to be able to acknowledge something and then move on, because I think he can't spell things and write them out. I've actually forced myself to write long emails because it's just better, but I know exactly the situation that you're in. That's interesting. That's really interesting. All right. I didn't want to diverge on that.
No. I think it's an important thing to talk about sometimes. I mean, it's like the reason why I didn't fit in at school was because I was basically classed, like I didn't fit into the system because I was dyslexic and I couldn't figure stuff out, and they couldn't mark me or grade me the way, because I just didn't fit into the system the school made. And it was like, all right, so I'm clearly got something going on. I'm not like, I've obviously got some ideas, but yet you're not supporting me. So what do I do? And that's why it took me a while to get myself to art college and find my other way of going about it and working out society, so to speak, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
For sure. There's a lot of things that have helped me. Audiobooks have been awesome, honestly speaking. They're great.
I'm with you there.
But what's also interesting is my daughter is so well read, like, so she can just devour books, and she's 14, but even when she was like 9, she could read a 1,000-page book in like 3 days, right? Wow. And I was like, I had no concept of how that's possible. Like, how did you come from me? It's like I just couldn't do it. So it is interesting, and I've actually thought about how does the being dyslexic affect the artist world, and what does that mean? Because I think there's a lot of people out there who are like us, who finally like, oh, that's what I can do. I can do some really cool stuff, like in Maya or whatever, and be very creative, and it's not affected by my dyslexia, So I think that's.
No, that's super. Yeah, no, 100%. I think you'll find a majority of people who are creative have some kind of, issue somewhere, so to speak. I don't want to use the word issues wrong. Yeah, disability. Yeah, issues.
Definitely. Listen, it's very common. There's this the dyslexic social skills are also sometimes not always there. There's a lot of things. I'm not going to do that. But I mean, I've actually heard of, for example, people that are training older people with autism in CG stuff. Right? Oh. They're really good at it. Like they're, because they can focus on certain things. Like rotoscoping is like really, really good, or certain other things they can get because they don't necessarily need to have social interactions with people, and they can focus on their jobs, and they really enjoy it. So I've actually thought about it. It's just reminded me. I've thought about trying to get someone from a dyslexic, group and talk about how the CG could relate to this, because I think there's something out there. Anyway, don't want to diverge.
No, digital art therapy, basically. It's great. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I do want to. Sorry, I want to keep going. So you were your method. You had to give up. You had to give up being on the box as much. But you did a couple of years. You said.
A couple of years, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a lot of the secure work. The fruit-based stuff,
right?
Which was actually strangely, it was actually kind of rewarding, to be honest, because it was more about the process. How do I make this process easier?
Right.
And I would work with my CG lead and my 2D lead, and would figure out more about the process.
Right.
Which was just solving a problem, which is kind of nice,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then what happened after Method?
Method, I tapped out at that point with big companies. I was like, I'm kind of done. I'm kind of burnt out the process. I don't want to go too deep into it all, but like you hit a point basically. I think everybody does. They hit a point where it's like I just need a little bit of like I wanted to find that kind of that first couple of years which we had at MPCLA, where it was like a tight knit small team who were just like knocking out really good work. You know, it hadn't got diluted by the big machine basically. So from there I moved to 8 VFX to give that a whirl,
right?
See what they were up to. I don't think sadly
was that 8 VFX. They're not around right now.
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I think maybe the whole kind of COVID thing might have. Unfortunately,
was that with Shira? Was Shira?
Yeah, Shira. Yeah.
Okay.
How do you know?
How do I know Shira?
Yeah, because I feel like she told me like 3 or 4 times, but I've totally forgotten.
Shira is she's a good talker. She's a good EP actually. She can sell ice to Eskimos. She's 100%. She is but no, I worked with her at Sway. So when I was at a company called Sway, and I started there as the head of 3D, or not head of 3D. I was started off there as a VFX supervisor and then became head of 3D. But she was the EP. And it was sort of my first foray into being like a bigger supervisor for, like a head supervisor. And so I usually didn't really deal with EPs that much, but then she's the one who's like, I'm going to help you and I'm going to introduce you to like how to talk to directors and how to do that. And she was great. She was really good at sort of making me a better supervisor from that point of view in terms of the logistics and the politics and all of that stuff. So she was kind of an interesting lady. But yeah, 8 VFX, they were French company, right?
French company, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And traditionally, and the company's the same, exactly the same. Like traditionally, the French have amazing schooling back in France and Paris.
Oh, they have several really good ones. Yep.
So it's like you can't help but like learn and become better. All the kind of guys I'd work with back at the mill were French who would just be like teaching me stuff. It's like, bam, this is insane. You guys are crazy good. And it was scary. So that was I was looking forward to that. The whole kind of like smaller boutique feel, just crazy talented people getting it done again. And yeah, I mean, at the time I was there, we moved from like one location to the new location. Things changed, and it was all right. I kind of like ended up overworking, but yeah, I mean, working with Shira is magic. She's amazing, and like you said, she has so many stories as well, with so many like just crazy people. Just this is like, it doesn't matter who you've met on set. She's probably met them like 40 years before or something, or 30 years before, and and I remember when this happened and that happened. It was like, this is insane. So yeah, so that was like a highlight, working with Shira for sure. At 8, and then at the same time I was working at 8 and kind of like trying to figure out what was going on. My wife, who works for IKEA, she got an opportunity out in New York. So I was like, all right, let's give New York a go. Let's see what happens. So that's why we kind of went backwards. What everybody tells me, most people leave New York and go to LA, but we went the other way around. And New York's scary. I don't know if you ever moved to a city like New York with not having a job. That was kind of intimidating. I was like, what am I doing? I'm walking into a slightly different side of the industry, because it's a different kind of different part of the industry, I guess, to a certain degree. Still doing commercials, but it's like a different pool. And I walked in there walked to New York with no job, and thankfully it just worked out really well. I got hit up by about 8, 9 companies. So I had a little bit, so I was lucky. So yeah, so then that's how I got to There's
a lot of really great boutique shops in New York. Lots of little cool places that do a lot of kind of cool things like that, for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. So Artjail was where you landed, huh? So tell us a little bit about Artjail.
Artjail is very boutique-y. And it was traditionally a lot of 2D stuff, and they would use, from what I understand, they would use like external CG to help, to get people in to help out more. And then they kind of basically got to the point where they were like, all right, we're doing all this CG now, we should start a department. And there's a gentleman called John Skeffington, who I used to work with. I've worked with maybe a couple of times loosely when I was at MPC, because he was working at MPC New York and I was working at MPC LA, and I came out to New York to help him out. on a couple of jobs. He got me in, and it was basically all right. Let's start a CG department. And that was like, I was like super excited, but I've never been so nervous in my life. I didn't realize how such an undertaking and demand it is to start from scratch. I think about all these people I've worked with in the past who have so fortunate that they've moved up the ladder and they've kind of led now like head of 3Ds for the mills or the MPCs and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, when I think about it, it's like you've kind of been handed a department this is working. And it's like when you suddenly really feel like you've got to make a department from scratch, it's like every decision counts and every hire counts. And, it comes down to like the render engines, like I said, the hardware. It's like straight away, it's like I need to hire a pipeline TD because it's like there's one thing working in 2D and it was like passing image sequences around. It's like all of a sudden I need to make those images. So hang on a minute, I need like proper process. I was basically walked in there with nothing basically. It was like me, Maya, V-Ray, and basically just referencing everything. I was just like, to get a job done, everything was a reference of a reference of a reference. It's like, how do I render like 20 shots with just me? It's like, how do I do this? So that was interesting. But the owner put some invested, and he listened, which was nice, and we kind of expanded. We got like a decent TD, a really good TD, sorry. And he wrote an F-track pipeline in about 6 months. Sorry, it was like solid between Nuke, Houdini, and Maya. And then within a year, it was like this is insane. So he basically saved me. And a word to the wise: first thing I always do whenever I join any company is basically make friends with the TDs and the engineers, because those guys get the job done for you. If you need like support, and you need to get like 1 million renders out, it's like you go and bring some donuts to those guys and girls and make sure they're happy, because they're the ones who get it done for you.
Absolutely.
So that's basically what I did. So and that's where we're at right now. It's been like 2.5 years, and we've got a Toronto office as well, but the Toronto office is a little bit separate, basically. So and they run their own thing and they go to do work their own way and that kind of stuff. But I think ultimately what the plan is to build this the company up on a stronger 2D and 3D side in terms of pipe and process and that kind of stuff, and then potentially maybe like so we can just basically migrate that way of working to wherever the boss wants to open another office, if he wants to open another one.
How many people in your 3D department now?
Right now we're going for a little bit of a change, but right now we're probably I don't know, like 3 or 4.
Okay.
But it's people rotate through and stuff, and now we're like building like CG department 2.0 basically. So the aim would be around like maybe, I don't know, 5 to 6 people probably, because we have enough freelancers who can kind of like come through and fill the bums on the seats and stuff. And there's a bunch of talented people here, which is amazing as well. I was worried about not knowing anybody out here when I first got here. But it's more about kind of like making that fine balance of how many people we employ to turning around the jobs and and making money, and also not killing everybody, which is what we're all trying not to do.
Yeah, of course. I do remember when you started there, obviously, because you're just like, okay, I'm started and I'm trying to build this thing. So you had this conversation with me, it's like trying to build this thing, and I'm thinking about using, because like if I'm starting from scratch, there's some opportunities that I can do something that people haven't done before, or that I've always thought like. And so one of the big things you're going to do is like you're going to start using Houdini more primarily in a lot of stuff we were doing, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And we were, V-Ray for Houdini was a product at that point. We'd done that. Obviously, V-Ray for Houdini has the new one is pretty amazing at this point, honestly speaking. But that was something you were going to do. So what was the decision that made you want to do that? Like, why did you decide, okay, we're going to try to do stuff in Houdini for the shop?
I mean, it made more sense for me because it needed less kind of support, if that makes sense, as well. So it kind of freed up our TD a little bit. But just because you could do more. I mean, you can it's all encompassing. It's not like a plugin. And I've used Maya for God knows how long, and it just feels like it's got slower and more sluggish. I'm not trying to bash it or anything. Autodesk is, they've done a good job. But it's also got old. It's old, and it's kind of like, well, what are we really using it for? And it's basically just modeling and animation. It's at this point we're doing effects, groom, distraction, volumes, liquid, all that's being rendered. It's like, why not just keep it in one package and just let it happen, and just use what we need to use for Maya. So it's gone the other way around, basically. The swing on in my mind's gone the other way in terms of use of software. It used to be like 70% Maya, 30% Houdini, say. And now it's just completely flipped in the last couple of years.
Interesting.
And also, I think so anyway. I mean, not more than the last couple of years. It's been going for a while. I've just been a little bit slow on the uptake. I also had a couple of guys who were younger in the industry who were just so excited about learning it. And it was very interesting for me, if someone who's like a veteran of Maya, struggling a little bit to get my head around Houdini, watching these guys just like absorb it. And it was just like a sponge. And it was like, they just became very strong very quickly. And I was like, that's impressive that a software can allow someone to get that strong in it really quickly. Like I'm talking like in a year, in less than a year, these guys were like really clever and really strong in it. And it was like, this is impressive. So
interesting.
Which, we all learn differently. And like I said, but now when I was learning, we didn't have YouTube and all that kind of stuff, but which makes life easier. But there's got to be something about a software, if you can learn it that quickly, that there's something strong about it as well.
Yeah.
If you're new to it and you can learn and pick it up,
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm coming at it with like, if I could like erase my mind a little bit, then maybe get my head around Houdini more might be a little bit easier. But yeah, that was it really. And it was also kind of just, for me, it was kind of like it just seemed like an efficient software basically. And I just kind of like, because we've got an opportunity to build something new, or at least get the foundations going, where we can like flip into maybe using Houdini a bit more and more and more.
There's a couple things that's interesting you say, because they are, and you're 100% right, but counter to what was known, right? Because Houdini is actually used to be really, really complicated and hard to learn. And that was the thing, right? Everyone was like, it's really hard to learn Houdini, et cetera, et cetera. Maya is much easier. And so that was the reason people like, oh no, if you really want to get geeky, you go into Houdini. And it's funny that you say like, no, you can get there much faster with Houdini. I was like, that's an interesting thing. The other thing you said is also that Maya seems to be getting a little bit more old, right? But Houdini is just as old, if not older than Maya.
Right. But it's just,
which is also just, there's something about it makes it feel fresh, and it's maintained that thing, which is also interesting. I mean, I still think that Maya, like you said, Maya still has a lot of powerful things that it does. It's still very good at character animation and things of that nature that are sometimes are a little more of a challenge. Or at least finding animators that are Houdini animators are going to be harder than Maya animators.
You've been hitting nail on the head there. For me, that's the one issue I've got right now with making a shop more Houdini orientated than Maya orientated is it's finding the artists as well.
Yeah,
that's the thing. There's less of them, it seems, or less of them who are. And I'm now going to contradict myself. There's less of them who are super talented, if that makes sense. There seems to be the most extremes, and then at that point you're paying like crazy money as well for an artist, and it's like that's why I kind of wanted it to almost breed it from the inside out, because it was like, if we can all get up to speed, then we haven't got to pay like crazy prices for people. And it sounds horrible to say, but it's just like, at the end of the day, I've got to make money as well. Like my part.
Well, how long does it take for someone to get up to speed in Houdini if they're a Maya guy?
I don't know. I've been told like, if you can switch off from Maya, I've been told anything between like, a year to 18 months, if you can just switch it off and never use it again. But it's having that opportunity to do it. But like, again, like I said, like kids are coming out of, and I don't mean to say kids from the patronizing way, it's just the way I talk. They're coming out of college. They've already been exposed to it a little bit. And, most of them kind of enjoy it. So it's like, well, why not just feed that and fuel that? Because it's a solid software. And, I mean, you may as well, like I said, you may as well feed that. If people are going to come in into a studio fresh and new and just be like, yeah, I'm really interested in Houdini, I want to do this and this and this. It's like, well, let's just jump on it and go with it and run with it, to be honest, because
It is very interesting. There's so many. I mean, I was talking with my friend Chris Blythe the other day, and he was saying it's like if you had told me 10 years ago that everyone is going to like jump on Houdini, I would not have believed it. And Blender too. Blender is actually that everyone's doing Blender stuff right now, and I'm like,
yeah.
I would not. Those are the most like up and coming DCCs, which is a very interesting thing, but definitely very interesting. Okay, I do have a one big question. It's like, so obviously, you're interested in Houdini. Houdini's got a very good renderer called Mantra, but there was what caused you saying is like, I want to be able to do V-Ray and Houdini as well. So what was the motivation there?
The motivation would have been the fact that I'm just generally super impressed with V-Ray. It's always I've never had an issue with it, basically, and I mean, I just simply that. I mean, I've played with Mantra and it has its pros and cons, whereas to be honest, V-Ray is generally good across the board. I like the way it's set up. I like the way it works. It makes sense to me. It gives you more. You've got more control if you want than, say, for example, an Arnold. Arnold is basically I haven't used it for a long time, but last time I used it was like 4 sliders, and you just have the hope that the render gets done. I think it's changed nowadays, but I mean, that was my first experience of it. And, Mantra to me was a little bit, there's a RenderMan-esque kind of thing going there, which is kind of, it's useful and it's not. Sometimes, you're faking baking and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And like I said, V-Ray for me has always been solid. Like I was so impressed when like Andy Boyd introduced me to it back in the day. And on top of that, it's like, I love the fact that you guys, I thought it was very clever the way you do the collection. That collection license thing is very clever. You look confused.
Yeah.
But no,
it's just I was like, oh, right, the collection. Because then you can just buy one license and then you can use it in whatever package you want. Yeah.
Exactly. I thought that was a very clever move on your guys' behalf. It was because I'm already wanting to keep like, trying to keep all my assets and all my rendering, all that kind of stuff in one render engine. So the fact that now I can look dev in Maya if I have a Maya artist, for example, but then I can export that, all the materials, all that kind of stuff, dump it in Houdini. It renders perfectly, renders 1-to-1. So then I'm doing effects or something, and the effects artist who's rendering out some volumes needs the shaders for something else. It's just very easy to pass it around. Then I can pass things over to Nuke if they want to do some stuff. And that, I mean, you start using V-Ray and Nuke. It's just like it makes it so flexible. And for someone like our size, you've got 1-2 TDs right now, and if there's going to be an issue, you can kind of figure out on a normal kind of level, and if it's deeper, then you're just like, this should work in V-Ray for Maya, Houdini, Nuke, what have you, Unreal, whatever you want to use. But if you couldn't get it working, then it's like, okay, maybe there's a deeper issue. But on a quick kind of look at stuff, you can debug pretty quickly and just be like, this works, I should do that, should do this. So that was my thing. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that was it really. It's like I've always been impressed with V-Ray, like I said. So I wanted to stick with it. There's nothing worse than, I mean, like Mantra and V-Ray seem to work quite nicely with when Andy was pointing that out to me, because we were doing a lot of Mantra rendering when he joined MPC for all the effects, but then we were doing a lot of like Maya rendering. We were using V-Ray then, so they worked nicely. They played together well, and it was easy to work like motion blur, offsets, all that kind of stuff. And at that time, I don't think V-Ray it would still do volumes well, but it was a bit chuggy on volumes. But now I think
that's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, now it's like super quick. Also, the V-Ray thing is also like just the GPU CPU thing and the hybrid rendering. It's like, all our boxes are got stuffed with GPUs as well as CPUs, and it's like whatever you need, whatever you need, artists. I mean, we found a couple of bugs which you guys fixed, I'm sure, a long time ago. But it just allows the artist to have more freedom, So why not keep that going?
Interesting.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me, to be honest. If I can keep everything to one render engine, then why not? And obviously you can do like the crazy thing for me is like render engines are like religion in my mind. You're kind of like, you end up being stuck to one, and you'll get the purists or the telling you that Arnold does this and Redshift does that and all that kind of stuff. But it's like equally if you really look at it, it's like Redshift's quick here because it doesn't give you as many options or something, whereas V-Ray is offering you all the options, and it slows down a little bit, but you still got to realize you're still rendering like a 4K image in like 3 or 4 minutes. It's like, that's pretty impressive. So that tends to get forgotten a lot in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. I know you guys been using V-Ray for Houdini for a while, but and we just put out V-Ray 5 for Houdini. And one of the big things that's going on there that we're looking at is USD integration. And Houdini has arguably one of the best integrations of USD of any DCC. Are you guys following that? Or are you guys looking into that as well?
100%. No, 100% we're in that. Like when I reached out to SideFX and I told them that, like our vendor of SideFX, anyway, the rep we were chatting to, I was like, look, man, we're gonna be switching more to Houdini, I think, in the future. This is our game plan. So, because I will be honest, Houdini is quite expensive. It was like, I've got to like justify this cost to like upper management here. He did actually point out that I believe you guys have been doing like a huge push of them about USD or something else. I can't remember. I feel like he did say that out of all the render engine companies, you guys are all software. You guys have been pushing it the most or something, from what I understand. I might be wrong, but it was a long conversation ago.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, obviously USD is sort of put together by Pixar. So RenderMan has had USD support for sure. But it's specifically Houdini, right? Like Houdini, the way Houdini is doing things is a little bit interesting. So it's like one of the first DCCs, at least that I know of, that's really kind of pushed the Hydra thing as well, right? So Hydra is, part of that whole USD. Oh, it's not. It's different, but it works with USDs really well. And so, but they figured it out. And so we have a really great developer, Andre, who's hilarious, by the way. He's one of my favorite people in Bulgaria. You've probably have you talked to Andre? Or
I think I've seen him in the forums, and I think we've had a few direct back and forths. Yeah, as well.
Yeah. He's a character. I call him Russian Andre because we have lots of Andres, but he's the Russian, and he's very good. And he was, he's been showing me some of the stuff that with USD and Hydra and how that works, which is quite powerful. And it could really change things for us a lot because we can basically just write out USDs now, right out of Houdini, and it can, technically you can render them right from a delegate. So you don't actually even need Houdini to render. So
right.
And that can be cheaper. Let's just put it that way.
For sure.
But there's a really, it's interesting because I really thought like, okay, I think there's going to be a trend well, I definitely know there's going to be a trend. I'm not going to tell people, but definitely there's going to be a whole lot more Houdini licenses in the visual effects industry in the next few years. I believe. Yeah.
No, I'm with you as well. That's why why I feel a little bit bad because I've kind of, on a personal level, I've taken too long to get up to speed with Houdini. So I'm now like getting my head around that and like really pushing it. But equally, It was like, because of that, I think that's what stemmed me to push it more in, on the New York Artjail side as well, because I just see it just taking over. I don't really see. I even, like you said with Blender, it's like I Autodesk and Maya have got to like sort themselves out. Realistically,
well, it's the thing. I think there's still, it was a thing back, like you said, it's like when you walk to a big visual effects industry or big visual effects office, like, it's like a Method or a DD or whatever, everyone had an access to Maya. Everyone was using Maya to do it. And then you had a few people that would use Houdini, and they were the specialists or whatever that were doing crazy explosions and high salaries, right? And then, but I think it's going to flip where pretty much everyone's going to have Houdini on their desk. And then there's going to be a few people who have Maya to do specific things that Maya is really good at doing. Such as,
exactly.
Character
I
stuff,
agree.
et cetera. So I think it's going to be interesting. It is going to flip. And this is not me saying that, this is not promoting anything. This is just what I'm noticing people saying and talking about.
No, I'm exactly the same. It's just pure observation. It's what is happening. And you're also seeing, the other thing is, well, you're seeing like lots more smaller mid-range shops popping up now. I mean, some of them obviously have sadly been affected by, obviously COVID and what that's done to everybody's industry and the world full stop. But the majority of those shops are coming up, and they are just pure Houdini because you can do everything in it. And it's I don't know what's going to happen with the big machines and all that kind of stuff. There's always going to be a place for them, but I think you're going to find there's going to be a lot more smaller places popping up, which are going to be taking up all those licenses of Houdini. And I'm like you, I'm not trying to promote or de-promote anything. It's just, like you said, it's just an observation. It's it's the fact that everything, you can do everything in one package. It's like, why would you want to fight that?
Right.
The whole exporting thing was an issue. It was always an issue. And some strange reason still seems to be an issue, even though you've got Olympics, which were like amazing. It's just
well, USD's fixing that. Honestly speaking,
right, exactly.
The promise is that it would fix it, and I believe they're doing a better job than I honestly, because I've heard of so many like, no, this will solve everything. Olympic. I was like, not everything. It's good. Yeah. It's not solving everything. But yeah, so USD I think has a lot more promise, honestly speaking, and I'm noticing it as well. So it is cool. It is cool. Well, cool. So, okay. So I think you and I see eye to eye in terms of where some of these things are going in terms of some of those DCCs for sure. But what are some of the cool things you guys are up to now at Artjail? Obviously you're saying you're growing and you got a couple things, you got a Toronto office happening. What else is going on?
I mean, I think internally it's kind of like, it's basically trying to figure out that perfect way of like blending this boutique environment into more of a kind of like a slightly bigger studio now. It's kind of working out that it's kind of keeping the process, or allowing you to have a process, but not stifling the creativity. I can see us opening offices in different parts of the US as well, in maybe the next couple of years, probably. Work-wise, Artjail's always had like a good relationship and rapport with directors. So it's kind of like also being lucky to be in that world where we can, we have like those kind of guys who keep coming back to us as well, which is very fortunate. We should hopefully be picking up more character work, I would assume, creature work. We basically jumped on I feel like we were the last, or I was the last shoot in LA before COVID like kicked off. Like it was just like literally wrap, everybody cover yourself up, get back to the hotel and fly back basically as quick as you can. It was crazy. But that was doing that job. That was the Noid. We brought back the Noid basically. Oh, right. Which I didn't know anything about, to be honest, being English and living my life in the 80s in England. Didn't know anything about this Noid character, but it was fun. It was like they gave us the opportunity. So that was shot then, but that was like that didn't come out until a year later because of all the COVID stuff. Interesting. So now hopefully we'll be picking up some more traffic, hopefully with some more creature work and all that kind of stuff.
I figured the pizza industry probably did pretty well during COVID.
They did very well for themselves. I think you'll see that Domino's shares went up when everybody else was struggling. That's cool. Hopefully, like I mean, for me and like the creatives at the agency and my boss, we can see so much potential with that little character. It's just a case. Oh, batteries might be going on my headphones. It's just a case of maybe not. It's just a case of making sure that we can like utilize this character, because I could see so much stuff coming from. They've talked about like, well, they did do a computer game. He appeared in like a Crash Bandicoot game.
Oh, he did?
All that kind of stuff. Yeah. We've been talking to them about like virtual production and real time production with the guy. So we bought like Xsense motion capture suit. We've just got the Stretch Sense gloves as well. We've got all that going. So that's why I was kind of interested to see what V-Ray and Unreal could do and what it was all about.
Oh, okay.
Because I was trying to figure out what that had to offer, basically. Because it's like an offline renderer with a real-time render engine kind of setup. So, Unreal to me is an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple in a sense that V-Ray offers this one that gives you you can't do full ray tracing inside of Unreal, but if you need it, you can use V-Ray. So that's basically what it is. So, because I think that Unreal is more than a renderer, honestly speaking. I think people think it's just the rendering. I think it's got a very good real-time renderer, but I actually think it is actually its own real-time platform and that's what's more interesting about it. And you basically would need to get ray tracing in there at some point, and V-Ray offers that option. So, but yeah, if you're interested in that, maybe you and I should talk offline about.
I'm always interested in that. Yeah, no, totally,
absolutely.
100%. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I'm very, 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 very interested in that process as well. So that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's like, but I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you probably right now. Like the whole kind of like Houdini, learning Houdini, it's like you get to a certain point, and you're kind of like, all right, there's repetition that happens. You know, jobs come through the door, and you're like, okay, this is going to happen. This is going to go like this, blah blah blah. You know, someone's going to say this. This is going to change. That's going to change. So let's just protect for that, knowing that's going to happen down the line. And that happens more and more and more because you've been in the industry so long. So like learning something new, like switching it up. So like the idea of doing Houdini, the idea of Unreal, you know, it kind of keeps us older gentlemen on our toes a little bit, or older artists, sorry, on our toes, and kind of makes us freshen up a little bit as well, which is good. Which is something I mean, education is great on A level, right? So you know, if you can keep yourself motivated and contextualize on the new stuff, and that's the secret, I think. So yeah, absolutely.
No, you're 100% right, and I think that there's a lot of one thing I love about what we do is that we're always learning new things, right?
Yeah,
and we're not glass blowers where it's been done for 100 years and it's never going to change, right? That like I couldn't do that. Like I want to do something like, okay, now I have to learn everything about USD. You know? And so suddenly like, okay, it's like, is that really interesting? I was like, I don't know if it's interesting. It's like, it turns out it's really interesting. It's kind of cool. But anyway, so I think you're right. You're right. You know, there's something really fun about what we do that makes it fresh and gives you new ideas. And I think those are definitely fun for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Listen,
hardware.
Yeah, all the new hardware. Absolutely. I was going to say, you know, it was really great catching up. We were just about an hour, and I definitely, you know, I'm interested to find out more about, you know, if you have some good ideas, we can always chat about what, you know, some new things that we can do. I mean, we helped conquer the V-Ray and Houdini pipeline with you, and I'm sure there's more things that we can do. It was great great to hear some old names. I definitely think I should try to get Andy Boyd on the podcast, and I don't have him on, so I'll try to get in touch with Andy, and maybe I'll do that through you. And I haven't, 100%. You know, I was thinking, and Shira as well, actually. So I should think about that.
I'll hit her up. I mean,
I actually have I have her email, so I think I was going to email her anyway. I was like, but now I think it's like we should just have her on the podcast. You're right; she has a ton of stories.
Oh my gosh, it'd be amazing! It'd be an amazing podcast. Honestly, it'd be amazing. like I said, those stories are insane. She'd have.
Yeah,
and just how the industry's changed and all that kind of stuff. It'd be a brilliant podcast.
Yeah, she was a live action producer for a long time, and she did a lot of crazy commercials. Her stories are insane for sure.
Yeah,
really cool. All right, well, cool. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you being on, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And this is actually going to come out we're going to fast track this one, so it'll probably come out next week. Just so you know.
Oh wow, really? Wow, amazing. Totally. It's been a pleasure. I mean, I must admit, I was really nervous about it, but like once you get going, you just get going, right? And just start. It's just like having a beer down the pub. It's
exactly that. Sometimes we even do have beers while we're doing the podcast.
Maybe I should have done that. not just drinking a cup of tea. That would be nice.
There you go.
Anyway, all right. Well, look, keep safe.